Welcome to Build Your Credibility in Your Business Through Powerful, Persuasive Presentations. And in case I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you in person, I'm Patricia Fripp. And the purpose of this event is to give you valuable information that will build your confidence, build your credibility, and drive your business. Also, we want you to be aware that if you need continuing education credits, we can give it with our online virtual training, Fripp VT, around powerful, persuasive presentations. This is because of my partnership with Lisa Patrick of XTRACredits. More about that later, because we want to make sure that every minute that you invest with us is valuable for you. We have a very important part of our team here to serve you, and that is Paul. Paul will now tell you how you can engage in polls, ask us questions, and who knows, perhaps later you can even send in your opening line of a presentation or conversation, and we can have in the moment mini coaching. So Paul, how do our friends engage with us?
Hello, everyone. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a chat box. Within this chat box, you can put your short, specific questions that will be answered during the call. Below the chat box, there will be polls throughout the call that will come up. You'll select your answer, click vote, and then it will return you back to the chat box.
Great, Paul. And let's bring up the first poll, which is helping me better understand who is live. Now, we do understand that many people who register are going to watch this later, and naturally they can't participate in the poll, but live and in person you can. So what are their choices, Paul?
Well, the choices are you an ICF member? Are you a speaker or consultant, part of the Fripp community? Or are you an other professional that's not listed?
Good. And because Fripp VT does give continuing education credits for ICF members, but that when we give accreditation with some other professions as well. But if you are part of a body who needs CE credits, you can always email me at pfripp@fripp.com and put in the title line CE credits, and we'll see if we could actually get that handled for you if you were interested. So Paul, what are our results?
Well, we have 29% that are ICF members, and then let's see here, 40% that are speaker consultants, and 31% that are other professionals.
All right, well, wonderful. And then while you're answering the next poll, we will start with our action-packed content. And that is, what are you most interested in? Because we're going to cover areas about how to build your credibility, certainly in networking events, sales conversations, and more formal presentations. So if you tell us your priority, we'll know how to customize this event for you. So while Paul's setting that up on the right-hand side for you to fill in, let's get serious. The most important part of connecting with any audience, be it one person, 10 people, 100, or 1,000, is to make sure that your conversational presentation is focused on them. And if you wanted a tweet, a quote, hashtag FrippVT, it would be that your audience would rather have a good listening to than a good talking to. And if it is at a networking event, a sales conversation, or in preparation for a more formal presentation, I'm suggesting the key to connection is conversation. The secret of conversation is to ask questions, and the quality of the information you receive depends on the quality of your questions. So for example, if you, I do a lot of work with financial professionals, and if you were asking a prospect, what are you most interested in? And they said, I want financial security. And using the very best question that Rick Barrera, famous coach and consultant, is famous for saying is, what do you mean by security? And this is important because what often happens, we have our agenda to talk about our services or our products, or we want to speak about us, that we ask a question, someone gives us the answer, and it's almost as if we step over the opportunity to get to talk about us. Now, you understand with that specific example, if you said, what do you mean by security? One person might answer that question, I need to have $10,000 a month in income. Somebody else might mean, I need a $10 million net worth. So the strategy of how you're going to recommend your advice and your services can help them are around what they want. So one, you will never go wrong if you work on the principle that other people are much more interested in themselves than they are in you. Two, you have to make sure that we ask good questions. And part of this, which is all in the same idea of giving people a good listening to rather than talking to, is to use I-U balance. I often call it the I-U ratio. It's a matter of, rather than say, I'm going to talk about, it might be what you will learn, what you will hear, what you will discover. It's using you and rephrasing some of the sentences you use to focus more on the listener. Paul, all right, so what are our statistics?
Well, at the top is presentations, professional presentations, that's 50%. Sales conversations, 30%. And networking is 20%.
Well, most people, 20%, good. Well, let's give you a couple of quick techniques for presentations when it is one-on-one, because I realize many people say to me, well, Patricia, I'm not a public speaker. Outside the privacy of your own home, all speaking is public speaking. There is no such thing as private speaking. And if you're going to a networking event, this is a great way to build your network in your community and build your local marketing. And Susan Rowan, who is the best-selling author of How to Work a Room, which is arguably the best networking book ever written, What Do I Say Next? And The Secrets of Savvy Networking, or other books written by Susan that continue in the subject. But she always says, have questions to ask, know what's going on in the news, have a couple of areas of conversation prepared before you go out, just as you would prepare for a presentation. And Susan and I have a specific technique that we did naturally that we realized we have to teach our audiences to do. So go out with a friend. It doesn't matter if it's somebody in your company or another professional in a non-competing industry. And it's the technique that I call travel with your own PR agent. So for example, one of our friends on the call, Melanie, is in charge of my social media and she's an expert on branding. So if we were out together and we were talking to Paul, so just imagine she was talking to Paul and I walk up and Melanie would say, Patricia, I'd love to introduce to you Paul, who is A. Now she would tell me what's interesting about Paul that she just found out. So Paul knows she paid attention. And she'd say, Paul, Patricia is truly one of the best speech coaches and sales trainers in the country. In fact, Kipling, a personal finance magazine, said learning presentation skills from Patricia is the 6th best way to invest in yourself. And I'd say, Paul, and I know Melanie is far too modest to tell you that she's a branding expert, and she's one of the few professionals who can set up campaigns that really work, not only for professional consultants, but executives. So you see, what we do is we say what we would like other people to know, but we say it about each other. That's called travel with your own PR agent. Now let's look at presentations, and be aware, as Paul said, if you have any short specific questions that you'd like us to handle, write them in and Paul will pose the questions or give us your comments as we're going along. So let's talk about presentations, and certainly with sales presentations you can do it simultaneously. The first 30 seconds and the last 30 seconds of any presentation has the most impact. That's when you break distraction. That's when you get people's attention. And at very least, we want people to think, wow, this is an interesting approach. Or it's better than I thought. Or, I'm looking forward to what he's going to be saying about this. So with a sales presentation, and this is assuming you asked your good questions and you now came to give a more formal presentation, whether it's virtually or whether it's in person. With a sales presentation, once you get introduced and perhaps you're sitting across a desk or you might be standing up in front of a leadership team, I would suggest your best format is to say, congratulations. Now, why are we doing that? One, nobody, the sales presentation skills training, virtual training, the first chapter is called, if you sound the same as everybody else, you have no advantage. So congratulations. Now, what are they genuinely excited about? What are they proud of? What have they just done? It could be as simple as your latest advertising campaign is spectacular, or your makeover of your web page is very appealing, or your stock price has gone up when many of your competitors are going down. You obviously, your decision-making process is great, or your strategies are working, or every single person I met and interacted with on the way to this meeting smiled, greeted me, asked me if I needed any help. Obviously, you've built a very good culture. Then never thank people for their time. You can value their time if it's a one-on-one conversation. With a formal presentation, I would say, thank you for the opportunity to present. Why? Now you're going to insert your service. Why? The Fripp virtual training could very well be the answer that you're looking for. In our preparation call, John mentioned, now write these down. You're most interested in here, so that's interested. Your biggest challenges are, so challenges, or your greatest opportunities will come from, right? Opportunities. So it doesn't matter if it's a challenge or an opportunity or an interest. Whatever those 3 or 4 talking points are, that is going to be how you're going to frame the structure of your presentation. Again, most people, doesn't matter whether they're selling high or low-end products or services, usually start with, hello, my name's Patricia. I'm from the Fripp Company. We've been in business for 16 years, and this is our unique methodology. And these are the type of clients we serve, and we'd certainly like to add you to our list of satisfied clients. Forget it. Nobody cares. I often say to my clients, does it matter if they're signing up for a demo or if they're ready to take to the next step and they don't know how long you've been in business? Now, this isn't a very important distinction. Business now than 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago is now very often, by the time we're actually talking to our clients, they know more about your product or service than half the people who work for you, because they've studied your website. They've probably done their own research before they even inquired. So that's with sales presentations. Now let's go back to the formal presentations. And when I say formal, it's a stand-up presentation for more than 10 people. And Paul, let's just see, are there any questions or comments? Oh, we have a few. Anything it's important for me to bring up right now?
Well, we have a question from Danish. What is the best way to present a weakness that you or your business may have? Or is it better not to reveal them at all?
Ah, very good question. What we all have to learn to do is to turn a seeming disadvantage into an advantage. So So for example, the Fripp company is a relatively small company. We have maybe 6 people, 7 people who are part of the team. So if somebody said to me, we're interested in a training company that can go throughout Europe. Well, if they wanted in-person training throughout Europe and they wanted 16 locations handled in 2 weeks, the chances are that's too big. If they wanted it virtual, we could take on the world. So what we're always going to stress is that being a smaller firm, we can act faster, we can make decisions immediately, we can drop our other priorities and focus on you fast. We are nimble, plus any money that you're investing with us, you are paying for our services and our expertise. We don't have a fancy office in the Bank of America building that you're going to have to pay for. Now, obviously, if you were a big company, you are going to stress that we have 36 trainers in 4 different countries, and we could roll out a team, and with our subcontractors we could handle training in 50 different locations on the same day. Of course, it would cost you a heck of a lot more than a Fripp organization. So I don't know if that makes sense. But to answer your specific question, you do need to somehow acknowledge it, however, put it in a positive spin. Are there any other questions?
Not right now.
Okay, good. And remember, any advice that you hear or any Frippicisms, please feel free to tweet them, #FrippVT. Good. Now let's look at the more formal presentations. And again, if you want to send in your opening line, we'll have some mini coaching. So let's look at some popular ways. So 1, a question. I would like a rhetorical question. So for example, you could say, if I were to ask you, is 2016 the year that you double your sales? Perhaps you'd say yes. Perhaps you'd say no. Most likely you would say, Patricia, we would love it to be, can you tell us how? Now let's notice what we do. This is a formula, and a formula means you can repeat it in different circumstances. So we're posing a question. If I were to ask you, give us 3 choices, of which the 3rd choice is what you want them to be thinking, and then 2, you put your name in it, which means they will be able to remember it a lot more. So that's a question. You could start with an interesting statistic or little known fact. And this is a great way to build your credibility if people don't know. And you can also attach an emotion to it. An emotion might be, would it interest you to know? Would it surprise you to know? Would it horrify you to know? Would it disgust you to know? Would it amaze you to know? So, for example, would it interest you to know that the fastest growing segment of the American population is people over 100 years old? Now, if this was a sales presentation for financial services, you could say that proves that you have a unique opportunity to position yourself as an expert to help people manage and plan for a very long, secure future. If it were a presentation, and let's just say you are an expert in health, wellness, fitness, you might say, would it interest you to know? Or would it amaze you? Whichever resonates with you. That means we all have to learn to live a healthier, more balanced, rewarding life. And whatever area of conversation or expertise you want to build, you're selling your value of your subject up front. Now, certainly you can start with a story. And if it's a keynote speech, you probably have a repertoire of great stories. If you don't, look within the body of your speech. Now, if you are a leader, and of course, a lot of my executive coaching is with leaders, and I often ask them, and I start with this question and write it down. It's a good question for someone to pose you. Get them to ask you so it's easier for you to answer and record your conversation, because there might be some gems you want to go back to. This is a great question, and it is, I start with, can you give me a snapshot of your life? And this way you start at the beginning and help them understand the overview, the gold mine, the treasure trove of your life is in your life experience in the stories. And in Fripp virtual training, mining the treasure trove of your life is one of the most popular chapters and courses for professional speakers or those who have a life story to share. And for an executive, it's very important that their sales teams and their employees see the person behind the position. And you can do that with personal stories. Now, whether you are using your personal story at the beginning or whether you are going to just use stories within your presentation, which of course, every point you have to visualize. You have to visualize the steps of a program we're going to roll out. Because if you can see it, and then we talk about the different steps, it's easier to comprehend. Stories are about people. And there is a formula that goes behind every movie that works superbly well with speakers you're going to use, with stories you're going to use in your speech. And it doesn't matter if you're putting the story in a sales presentation or in a speech. And that is a day in the life. In other words, a movie introduces you to the character. So at the beginning of our story, we need to know who you're talking about, just so we can understand them. So for example, if you were talking about your daughter, and you might say, my daughter might ask me the question, Mummy, can I? Now, it's very important. I need to 22 when she asked the question. So you need to set it up. When my curly-haired, freckle-faced daughter was 16. Now you see, I can see her. I have an idea to put this in the context. her age, so I can see her now. What she says makes more sense. If you're going to talk about you, you could also say, if you had met me when I was 12, you would have seen A. Now you're talking about yourself, but you're putting them in it. And whether you're selling, whether you're having a conversation, whether you're giving a speech, if you want to connect to your audience and make a good impression, again, this is your you focused phrasing and your you ratio, your you versus I ratio. You're talking about yourself, but you're bringing your audience into your story. So, Paul, do we have questions or comments?
Not right now. It appears they're a little bit shy.
Oh, they're hanging on my every word, Paul. So let's look. When it comes to your presentation, we have to get off to a good start, and we have a framework for sales presentations, and we have a framework, some suggestions for the, for a presentation. There's a rhetorical question. There's an interesting statistic. You add some emotion, and you can start with a story. Every sales conversation, every sales presentation, every speech is built around a big idea. So, for example, a sales presentation, you are not actually going to say this, but the big idea that you have to prove is that your company is going to be better off choosing to do business with my company. A presentation might be you are selling a big idea. If you want to get promoted, you need to learn to sell yourself and your ideas. That's the big idea. That's the premise. And then the framework, the structure behind the skeleton of your words as your talking points that make your case, that prove your big idea and help the audience get there. So, for example, here is a very simple formula. Oh, now I didn't finish the other formula, Paul. You got to keep me on track. So let's go back to the story. A day in the life. Okay, let's go back to that. A day in the life, you're introduced to a character. And then something happens. In a movie, that's called the inciting incident, the moment of which there is no turning back. And the result of that is, and the result of that is, and the result of that is. And that's how the story develops till you have a resolution. Now, in a sales presentation, a day in the life, you want to introduce your satisfied client. So you might say, when I first got a call from Pat, she said, Patricia, help. As you know, we're a $2 billion software company with aspirations to be $20 billion. The work that you've done with our sales team and executive have been great. But we know our company has any corporate rock stars. We would like you to work with our president. He's not a bad speaker. He's an engineer. He's shy. We would like you to help design his speech and turn him into a corporate rock star. And you got 4 hours. Now, can you see we now have a character who is giving me a help? Something happens. They now know to get to a $20 billion company, they need a corporate rock star. So what they did, as a result, they went to Patricia Fripp. And so now as this story developed, the result of that was we did this. And so it goes on. So the end of the story is, of course, I wish you could have been there. Now, this is another technique. Transport the audience to a different time and place. I wish you could have been there, sitting next to me in the front row of the Bellagio Hotel. when this wonderful, charismatic man walked on stage and with 4 slides and no notes, had his audience laughing, thinking, and confident they were working at the strategy was sound. Good. So with that, Paul, so I explained that formula. Now let's go back to the other formula. So we've got the formula for a story. Now we have the formula for a speech. Remember, it's all the big idea. So the big idea is your premise, your central theme, your dominant idea, whatever makes more sense to you. Now, that is not necessarily the opening. So whatever approach you take, whether it is the question, the story, it could be a statement of your point of view. It never ceases to amaze me that intelligent, ambitious individuals frequently overlook developing the #1 skill that is absolutely guaranteed to position them ahead of the crowd. Namely, developing the ability to stand up and speak eloquently with confidence, or at very least, stagger to their feet and say anything at all. No, you see, that's my statement, and that is a way to start. So however you start, you have to introduce your big idea. Now, it could often, if I'm talking about presentations, I might say, my premise is every ambitious professional can learn to build their credibility and their business. And then the audience will be, oh, how? 1, whether you're networking, developing a presentation or a sales presentation, there are some basic principles that will give you a competitive edge. Now, you see, we've basically said that in different words, and then you would think, oh, well, what are some of the ways that you do that? Which is what we are now answering for you. Think of it this way. A presentation is like a conversation, except you're standing up and you have more people in your audience. And it is more structured and organized and more specific, because a conversation goes back and forth. Whatever the conversation, what are you going to talk about? How to build your credibility and your business by better presentation skills. Oh, well, good, I want that. How do you do that? Well, you look at every area of your life when you present. Oh, but I'm not a public speaker. Oh, yes, you are, outside the privacy of your own home. All speaking is public speaking. Well, where do I get started? Well, you got to start with a big idea. And your big idea has to be focused from the audience's point of view. Well, can you give me an example of that? All right, so can you see what you would ask me in person at the table and what I'm delivering on stage? Based on what you say, you can anticipate what would the audience be thinking, because that's what a person would ask. So your presentation structure is very much like a formal version of what would happen in a conversation. So with that, Paul, do we have any questions or comments?
Let's see here. Well, Pamela asked, how do I submit questions? And I'll just answer Pamela. Pamela, just in the chat box, put your short, specific question in the same place that you put that, and we'll answer that. And now we have one from Denise. That says, I'm concerned that when I tell a story, their minds may wander off into how it relates to their situation and not focus. Is this good or bad?
Well, it depends on your intention. You see, you do want people to see themselves in your story, or it could certainly see the application for their life. So what you might want to do, so for example, I have a story I'm going to be using next week, 2 financial professionals with a bank. And I'm going to talk about going into a dress store for a pair of hose and ending up with 2 pairs of hose, a pair of turquoise shoes, and very expensive beaded evening dress. And afterwards, at the end, I say, let us look at what that young woman did and how it specifically applies to you, developing more relationships with high net worth clients and your commercial banking clients. So you see, you have to make sure the connection, and it's, you want people to put themselves in the thing, but you want to bring them back. Now, if the story is longer than it is engaging, you might lose them, but having them think is good. All right, Paul, any more?
From Pamela, what is a good you-focused way to stop side conversations during a Toastmasters meeting?
All right. Well, let's see. I hope that at Rainbow Toastmasters tonight, I don't have any distracting sides conversations unless they say, oh, isn't she good? It might be. Well, at the beginning of your presentation, you have to, of course, grab and keep their attention. And very often, side conversations might be part of the culture. So, for example, I belong to a breakfast club and we have great speakers. And there are a few personalities who always have side conversations. And I just look at them and go like this, because it's disrespectful. And so I'm not sure the nature of your club, so I don't know. But how about this? If you can get whoever is running the meeting to say is, you can look forward to some presenter who have prepared some really good presentations. And we all owe it to them to focus our attention without side conversations to distract on them. Because when it is our turn to get up, we want their attention as well. And always remember the important management principle. It works with children and it works with members of Toastmasters or any organization. And that is behavior that is to acknowledge good behavior and reward it. All right. Any more questions or comments?
Yes, we have from Darlene. If one has to present information in a presentation that is a bit dull, how can one make it exciting all the way through?
Well, one, you don't think it's dull. In fact, Melanie was telling me this morning, that in her very formal MBA fancy class that she's taking, that only smart people can get into, that this is talking about business law. And the opening from the professor is, I apologize that you had to read that book. Well, now you're finding common ground. But what she said that he did magnificently well is he told stories as it related to what they had to learn. So you have to, one, is to give case histories, which are what stories are, of what you are learning. So there's a reason there becomes some people behind the business law. And obviously, some subjects are more exciting than others, but you do have to, how about this? At the beginning, you could say, let's start with, let's distill a myth. And that is that corporate tax is boring. And you'll probably get a laugh. And then you'll say, perhaps you can relate to Mary. Now you're going to tell a story about Mary or John or Susie or a company who did not know what you're about to tell them and what the disastrous result was because they didn't. I was talking to a group who work in the construction business, and I made the comment, get ready for a hashtag Fripp VT quote. There is no such thing as a boring subject. There are only boring speakers. And the gentleman put his hand up and said, I speak on a boring subject. Well, you might not know Fripp, but you're already getting the point of view that it's not that I mind admitting I'm wrong, but I'm going to fight for my point of view. No such thing. I said, what do you talk about? He said, OSHA rules and regulations for 7 hours. So I said, come up here. Now, I understand he was about 6'8", hairy, big muscles, shoulders. So I had to hold the microphone up here. So give me one OSHA rule or regulation. You have to wear your safety goggles. I said, now tell me one story of one worker who didn't. Now tell the story from the point of view of his wife. Start your presentation this way. How would you feel if you were a 22-year-old wife and mother of 2? As you kissed your 24-year-old husband as he went off to work on a construction site on the corner of Market and 17th opposite the Kroger store. And as he's drilling through concrete and a big chunk of concrete hit him in the eye and he doesn't wear his safety goggles. They take him to hospital, and after 2 days, they bring him home. You nurse him back to health. Now, how do you feel when he goes back to the same construction site to do the same job with only one eye? And you know the chances are he's not going to wear his safety goggles. Welcome to the 2016 update of the 138 OSHA rules and regulations that we have to reinforce on our working sites. You know them. However, it's good to be reminded of the change and the importance, not only for the health and welfare of your workers, but the financial responsibility we have to them and the high insurance costs for not enforcing them. See what we're doing? We are at least bringing some life and selling the value. Any more questions and comments? I think I can see one from Cynthia.
Well, Cynthia did ask, she wants to know a little more about Fripp VT. She's not very familiar with it and how it works.
Well, we certainly don't want to have Cynthia or any of our other friends not know about Fripp VT. So, for example, Paul, I bet you have Fripp VT up in the background. And
I do.
VT stands for Fripp Virtual Training. And if you want to improve your presentation skills easily, quickly, and conveniently in a very cost-effective way, Fripp VT is your answer. Now, certainly, if you want continuing education credits, we can certainly provide that for you. So if you go to Fripp VT, and we do understand that many of our Fripp VT members might in fact be on our call with us or watch the replay, and we want to encourage you that it is better to go in consistently, even if it's only for one chapter, than to go on and say, oh, I'm going to wait till I can do 3 hours. You're never going to find 3 hours. So if you go to Fripp VT, which is what Paul is showing you. Now, if you have your cell phone and it's on, mine, of course, is off, so you have my undivided attention. But if you have your cell phone and you can text to 96,000 and the message is Fripp, F-R-I-P-P. And what you will get at the end of that, it'll say there might be a charge for this text. And then you can immediately sign up for a free trial. So, for example, if you would like to go in, Paul, show them a Fripp virtual training, you can get a free trial. And what you will get to experience is a chapter on openings, a chapter on sales, and a chapter on storytelling, which are many of the subjects that we're including. So we'd like you to do that. No obligation whatsoever. Now, if you happen to be an International Coaching Federation member, or if you are just on this call, because this first was designed for the ICF members to help them with their their continuing education credits, then you can use, if you want to join ICF as a coupon code and have a 10% discount. But go take it anyway. Now, Paul, if you can show them, you see, if you go back to the home page, you will see that there is an area that you can click on that will take you to the continuing education credits. We're just doing a slight tweak because in what you will find is that this will be branded to extra credits when you go in a few days. So that's just working. And Paul, if you go down to the bottom of the page there, go way down, you can see here some of the bodies that gives us continuing education credits. And we are adding to it. So as I say, if you can get continuing education credits for your business or your profession and you don't see them here, send me an email, pfripp@fripp.com. Tell me the organization and what you want, because Lisa, who is the president of XTRACredits, that's what she does all the time for us. And so that's it, Paul. If you can go back and let's just quickly, just for a moment, show you, we'll turn can you turn, I don't know if the sound will come through, Paul, but just if you go to if you can sign in and go to the courses, so we could just show how interactive this is. And while you are doing that, Paul, let's look at how do you remember and be repeated for the right reasons? Okay. So you see, there are 12 different courses that if you want CE credits, you can take one at a time. Most people sign up for the ongoing access to the program. And if you can, as I say, if you're an ICF member or other accreditation bodies, when you finish a chapter, you print out the certificate and you send it to Lisa, which is really us, and handles it for you. Some bodies just believe that you've done it. You just tell them you complete it and they give you your credit. So Paul, just to satisfy Cynthia and anyone else, just give us click on, how about, let's go to the importance of a good story. And remember, if you get your trial, you can see the first one. So why don't we click on start training, the phrase that pays. Every day, your listeners are bombarded with more and more information until their ears are positively ringing. How on earth can you make your messages the ones that stick in their memories? Your goal as a business professional and presenter is simple. Speak to be remembered and repeated. Tying a powerful, repeatable message to each point gives you a phrase that pays. When we remember vivid examples, we nearly always remember the associated lesson or message. Your phrase that pays is your point of wisdom, or foundational phrase, or sound bite statement. The following are techniques that help to create or identify your memorable phrase. One, okay, Paul. Well, we showed them what Fripp VT looks like. And it is very interactive because it's designed in an entertaining way to engage you and help you learn the information. So without the course, you do have questions. I ask you to see if you're paying attention at the end of the chapter. Again, we ask you some questions, and not rocket science. You've learned everything that we ask you. So Paul, if you can come back and let's see, are there any other questions? There's one area that, just to give you a couple of specific pieces of advice before we certainly have our concluding remarks, because this builds your credibility. So it builds your credibility when you use very specific language. So for example, I am on a crusade to wipe out sloppy speaking. Now I'm failing miserably, but I'm not giving up my mission. And you notice as more and more people text, the more you stand out when you're a good presenter. But we need to be clear and concise and credible by using specific language. So for example, one of the questions I ask all my clients, specifically, what do you mean by thing? And if you were going to sign up for, let's say, a seminar, the 3 things that would make you a success, would you rather sign up if it said the 3 guaranteed strategies that will help you? So what do you mean by thing? Do you mean strategy, idea, formula, discipline, habit? Any of those words make it sound more valuable. Leads. Oh, no, you didn't. You couldn't have gone to a seminar, met other people, and walked out with a ton of their business cards. No, be specific. Start analyzing what it is you're actually saying. Is there a better word choice? And my Fripper size to you would be record your side of conversations. So with that, Paul, do you have any questions, comments, opening lines?
There's a question from David. He says that he understands that he's not supposed to be the hero of his own stories, but how can he do that if he's telling his own story?
Well, what I would suggest to David, and of course, I don't know the story, but let's just say you were telling an organization how you became successful in your industry. Then what you would do is you would give credit to your mentors, encouragers, bosses, coaches who gave you advice and taught you the principles that now made you successful. So that can be part of it. And then if you were telling the story, so for example, and this is a story I tell, it's when I got off the boat from America, I was to America from England. I was a 20-year-old hairstylist with no job, no contacts, nowhere to live, and $500. Now, I'm a Hall of Fame keynote speaker, travel the world, executive speech coach to corporate America. So I can say where I started and where I ended up. What made the difference is, one, a personal discipline and a commitment, taking advantage of opportunities, but also developing good presentation skills. I would not have got from the hairdresser, not the comfortable living, and I like being the hairdresser, don't get me wrong. But what took me from where I was to where I am is the ability to present effectively. So it doesn't matter if you tuned in as a coach, a speaker, an ambitious professional, a sales professional, a leader. What will take you where you want to go is developing good presentation skills. So I am living happily ever after, as it were, because of presentation skills. Now, so Toastmasters, the National Speakers Association, attending seminars, learning from mentors, investing in speech coaches, going to every seminar I could. So what that is although I am talking about myself, David, and the audience would know that, yes, she is successful in her current profession, it's the disciplines that we can all develop. It's the focused attention we all need to develop to do. It is looking for classes, seminars, Fripp VT, and coaches to help us improve our condition and drive our goals. So in my case, presentation skills is the hero. I'm as the result. So I hope that is helpful to you. So remember, presentation skills. And if you want to learn to be a more effective presenter, easily, conveniently, and quickly, take a trial, and we hope you will join Fripp VT, and you can use ICF as a coupon code to save you 10%. This is a very cost-effective way. And you, as a coaching, International Coaching Federation member, or with other affiliations, we can even offer you continuing education credits. So with that, Paul, are there any other questions or comments?
Just a few people saying thank you for your words to help us give better presentations. There's endorsements about Fripp VT. They enjoy it. Marissa said she feels like she should be paying you back some money. And Denise mentioned that she's enjoying it and is much better now that she's going in more often.
Ah, good. And this is because here is, and for those of you who are speakers and consultants, there is a dirty secret from the training industry. And we know there are billions of dollars spent in North America on training. And the dirty secret is, as well as we present and as dedicated and interested as our audience might be, and the more we focus on being clear, concise, making it about them, having it well structured, having stories, using specific language, all the techniques we learn and Fripp VT reinforces, we are still lucky if after 2 weeks, if they remember 30% of it. In other ways, they're going to forget more than they remember, which is why virtual training at your own convenience is really the only way you can really long-term build skills for a lifetime and a career time. So I appreciate the endorsement, but it's repetition and reinforcement. One chapter would take 5 to 8 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And if you just committed to 1 a week, it's the consistency that makes the difference. And with that, we are offering this seminar again for International Coaching Federation members and any of the friends of Fripp, because any event like this that is open to the public, we open to our other communities. So, for example, we are doing this again. Now, understand, no event with the same content will be exactly the same because it depends on what the amount of percentage of what you want. We're doing this again the 19th of November and the 15th of December. And you will be sent out, if you are watching this as a replay, and even if you're live, once you register for these events, you get a replay link. And that comes out, Paul, within 24 hours?
Yes, that will actually be sent just a few hours after the call, to be specific.
Oh, good. You see, Paul, we're improving our specificity as well. And then we will invite you to other events. If for any reason you never, ever, ever want to hear from Patricia Fripp again, just send me an email, pfripp@fripp.com, and I need to know your name and your email address, and we will make sure we never mail you again. Oh, not intentionally. Good. Paul, any questions or comments from you?
No, just a few thank yous, and that was it.
All right. So always remember, the first 30 seconds and the last 30 seconds have the most impact. So we appreciate that you have tuned in to build your credibility and your business. And I am confident that when you signed up, you knew that presentation skills is part of your answer. May I remind you that all learning requires repetition and reinforcement. And Fripp, VT, is a great place to go. And we can now offer continuing education credits for many professionals, including International Coaching Federation. Thank you, Paul, for your help and brilliant moderation. And with that, until next time, this is Patricia Fripp saying, speak up.